ask questions, listen carefully, and feel free to ask any questions. As Aurelia already told, this is for you, and we are making this event in terms for you to understand and ask questions about the call. So today's event is organized jointly by Latvian and Lithuanian NCPs. So this is our organizational team, ERC NCPs. At any times when you have questions about the ERC calls, please feel free to contact us. We'll be happy to answer any questions and help to understand you. Any issues related to the ERC calls, including this ERC Advanced grant. Today's agenda, well, we'll start with the introduction. I will tell you about housekeeping rules in terms of how we proceed with today's event.
I'm sorry, Liene, we can't see your slides if you're sharing them.
Yes. Oh, you cannot?
No. Perfect. Now on the agenda. Perfect.
Okay.
Now we can introduce.
Okay, sorry, I had no idea. My apologies. So today's agenda. So we'll start with the introduction on the call. And as the ERC Advanced grant will be funded according to the lump sum funding model, so a bit more about that. We'll have the ERC Executive Agency Scientific Officer presenting it, Dr. Vaida Bankauskaite. After that, we will give the floor to you to ask questions. So please feel free to listen carefully. And if you have any doubts or misunderstandings, feel free to post your questions or then we'll invite you to open your mic. And then we will have a success story from Poland, Professor Andrzej Dębowski from the International Institute of Molecular and Cell Biology in Warsaw. So he will tell about his project. Good morning, Professor.
Hi, good morning.
Thank you very much for being here with us. So we are really thrilled and happy to hear from you today. So again, I would just like to encourage participants to take this opportunity, as we do not have these events every second month or every year. So take your opportunity, listen to what both of the speakers are telling you, and feel free to ask any questions. May I ask the person who has the microphone on to switch it off?
That's it. Everybody's muted.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Somebody's talking at your end. Okay, continue, please.
Okay. And initially in our agenda, we had foreseen to have another success story, but life is life. And unfortunately, this morning we received a message that the second success story cannot join due to some personal issues. So probably we will end earlier, but you know, it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. So let's focus on our today's speakers, listen carefully to them, and feel free to take this chance and get involved, ask questions, and enjoy the story and the presentation. And also after the second speaker, we will give you the floor to ask questions to Professor Dębowski. If any questions still on the first presentation, we'll have a time to take those. And some final housekeeping rules. So in terms to have a really nice flow of today's event, first of all, we will record both presentations. In terms, there will be some other people who would like to rewatch the event, or maybe next year someone will be interested in rewatching this event. So we will record both presentations, not the Q&As. To have a really nice event and a pleasant listening, we invite you to check if your microphone and camera is off when you're not speaking. And also for to secure the connection of today. In terms of the questions, so feel free to use the chat function to post your questions in the chat, but those who are really into interaction, so after each speaker, you are invited to raise your hand and switch on camera and microphone and ask your question orally. The presentation will be shared after the event. And as it is important for us as an NCPs to understand if these type of events are useful for you, we'll have a short feedback form, which is really like 1 minute for you to give us the feedback. And on the ERC Advanced Grant call deadline, as I already mentioned, the call will open only in May, so that's in 2 months. But anyways, the window for applications is very short, so that's 3 months. So that's why we are starting already now, informing you and giving you this chance of hearing from the success story, as the timeline is not that wide. So you still need time to understand all the rules of the game and to prepare your application in case you're really prepared to submit your application this year. So this is the timeline of the call. And as I already mentioned, at the end of the event, we will share in the chat the feedback form, and we would like to hear from you. How did you like the event? And more to understand if these kind of events are useful for you, and would you like to have similar in the future? So, and we'll be happy to adjust to your needs. So from me, this is it. I would like to stop talking, as I would like not to put the focus on me, but on today's speakers. We have 2 wonderful speakers today. I'm very happy and thankful for both of them joining us and sharing their insights, information, and tips. So the first one we'll have from the ERC Executive Agency, so the scientific officer, Dr. Vaida Bankauskaite, and she will tell us about the call. So what is ERC Advanced Grant, and a bit more about the lump sum, which is a new model that came in within the framework program Horizon Europe. And this will be also used in this call, Advanced Grant 2024. So Vaida, if you are ready, I would like to ask you to share your slides.
Thank you. I will now try to open my presentation. We'll put in the presenter mode. Can you see it?
Yes, very well.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much for the invitation, and I really hope that my presentation will be useful. So originally I'm from Lithuania, and of course I am more than happy to help my home country applicants as well as Latvians, our neighbors, to be more successful in very competitive European Research Council funding scheme. So in my presentation, I'm going to speak briefly about the European Research Council. Then I'm going to speak how to apply, how to write a grant application, and briefly mention evaluation procedure. I'm also planning to speak about the changes since this year, which have been introduced in our evaluation procedure. So European Research Council is part of Horizon Europe program, and it started in 2021. It will last until 2027, and Horizon Europe is European Union Research and Innovation Program, and ERC budget in this program is 16 billion, which is 17% of Horizon Europe, which is quite significant part. What makes different the European Research Council from other EU funding schemes is that the scientific strategy is set up by scientists, so not European, not European Commission people, staff, but scientists who work in the research institutes, universities, and they make up the scientific strategy. So these are the people, 22 renowned scientists, and then this strategy is implemented by European Research Council Executive Agency. We work myself, I belong to this agency together with more than 400 colleagues, and we implement this strategy as set by Scientific Council. So that's very briefly. And then ERC, European Research Council and figures, which was established in 2007. So now it's quite some time. We have a history. And then since the beginning, more than 13,000 researchers were funded. Just a few figures, and then more than 220,000 articles from the European Research Council projects were published in scientific journals. So the output quite significant. Now, in a really briefly, one sentence, what is European Research Council funding? Is that it means it's not relevant to synergy scheme, but to the core funding scheme, starting consolidated and advanced grant. It's one researcher, one host institution, one project, and one selection criteria. And since this year, we want to have ambitious, so we kind of don't speak anymore about high risk, high gain, but we refer to ambitious projects. And which is also very important to keep in mind that it can be funded in all research fields, meaning in life sciences, physical science and engineering, and social sciences and humanities. So as I mentioned, there are three core funding schemes: starting grants, consolidated, advanced grant. We also have synergy grant and proof of concept. In this presentation, I'm going to focus on advanced grant scheme, even though there are some features which are relevant to other funding schemes as well. Okay, so excellence is the only evaluation criterion at the European Research Council, and what is meant by that evaluators are assessing excellence of the research project and excellence of the principal investigator. So unlike other EU funding schemes, for example, we are not talking about the impact or something, it's just really excellence of these two components. And while in the past, this excellence was kind of 50-50 weight, right? So 54 research projects, 54 investigator. Since this year, since 2024, evaluators are asked to put more emphasis on the research project. So probably it's good news for the countries like Lithuania and Latvia, where maybe not, where maybe applicants don't have publications in the top science journal, but they're creative and they have capacity to write excellent research projects. So when it comes to research projects, they are looking for groundbreaking nature, scientific impact, scientific approach. And by approach, it means in terms of feasibility, but also in terms of methodology. And for principal investigator, it's intellectual capacity, creativity, commitment, and expertise. Now, this paragraph is taken from 2024 European Research Council work program. An advanced grant aims to support excellent principal investigator at the career stage at which they are already established research leaders with recognized work record of research achievements. Principal investigators must demonstrate the groundbreaking nature, ambitions, and feasibility of their research project. And very important thing that successful principal investigator at the advanced grant is expected to be an active researcher and to have a track record of significant research achievement. It means that, for example, ERC is going to fund the researcher who was not strong in the past, but who is still active doing research and has a team. So up to $2.5 million for a period of 5 years is a grant amount, and additional funding is up to 1 million. So there are certain conditions when additional funding is could be asked. And type of funding, again, since year for advanced grant is lump sum, so it's a pilot project. So we have to keep in mind that it's just the beginning. It's this year for advanced grant. The work on that, it's still ongoing. So there are still questions should be decided and addressed. So we still don't know everything how this lump sum will be implemented. But I would not, I would say that it shouldn't be an obstacle for you to apply, because it's the most important thing. It's still the project and how it is. If you get this grant and funding, I'm sure that lump sum details will be sorted out together with the executive agency of the ERC. So how to apply? I would suggest that, yes, if you really consider that and you would like to, get familiar with the documents which we have, register early. So the documents are very useful. So information for applicants, work program, frequently asked questions. These are all materials which would help to understand you how this competition works, and also will help you to prepare your proposal. You can talk to your institution grant office, talk to ERC grantees, exactly what we are doing today. And you also can contact the executive agency, my colleagues, to ask all your questions well ahead of the submission. And we have a functional mailbox. You can ask. Maybe you have concerns or doubts. We are really happy to answer and to help you. If you are planning to work with collaborators, of course it's good to speak with them in advance for several reasons. First of all, to get them known what you are planning to, but also maybe these collaborators are among reviewers. You never know. So it's better to speak with them in advance, to get their permission, to make it clear that in case you get a grant, they are willing to contribute to the project. Host institution, you can choose and work in any EU member state or associated country. You can change it during the project's life, and as our experience shows that ERC grants are so prestigious and so welcome in the host institution that you can actually negotiate with the host institution your position, equipment, administrative support, and access to infrastructure. So host institution is not evaluation criterion, and you shouldn't be afraid that applying from host institution based in Lithuania, Latvia, it would be like kind of penalty. No, actually, sometimes it's the opposite, because the reviewers know that the applicants in the countries where research infrastructure is weaker, they kind of even like to encourage the applicants even more. So, but it's not evaluation criteria, so you shouldn't worry about that. You also should think about what would be your research panel. So you can find so here you can see there are, in life science, there are 9 review panels. In physical science and engineering, we have 11 review panels. And in social sciences and humanities domain, we have 8 review panels. And the SH8, Studies of Cultures and Arts, it's the new one since this year. So here are the titles of these review panels. If you would like to have a more detailed description, you can find that in the work program, Guide for Applicants. And even then, even if you cannot find like exactly precisely what would be your topic, you have to choose which is, in your view, the most relevant, because ERC accepts all topics, so there are no predetermined topics. So these review panels is kind of guidelines, like to guide you which more towards topic. But any topic would be evaluated and looked at. You can also, in our website, if you select the review panel, you will be able to see abstracts of already funded projects, and that could provide you a better idea of what kind of projects were funded in the past. So if you start writing your proposal, what is important is that that you have to submit both parts, part B1 and part B2, at the same time. It has been discussed, of course, extensively that it requires a lot of work for the applicant to submit both parts at the same time, while if it's rejected in step 1, then it's kind of waste of time to write the full proposal. So, but at the time, for the time being, the system is like this. We cannot change it, and there are researchers who think that actually it's a good intellectual exercise to write a full proposal, so it's not a waste of time. So in part B1, it's an abstract, a cross-panel explanation, 1 page, and an extended synopsis is 5 pages, and CV and track record is up to 4 pages. So it's not a big document, but it's very important one. We will speak about that a bit later. And in part B2, submitted as PDF, it's scientific proposal. It's up to 14 pages. So the reviewers are going to look part B1 in step 1, part B2 in step 2 evaluation, and budget in step 2. So the changes since this year in CV and track record for the applicant is that there are no prescriptive principal investigator profile. So that was kind of abandoned, and we allow now the investigator to provide the personal details, and also we say, okay, go ahead and list 10 research achievements and peer recognition. And we ask the applicant to provide a short factual narrative on the significance of the listed achievements and recognitions in relation to the research field and the proposed project. And the reason for that was also that research fields are different, and then, then the applicant is capable to explain what is important in their research field. So we ask them to demonstrate advancement in the field and to put emphasis on more recent achievements, and to list the prizes, fellowships, academy memberships. We also encourage applicants to provide any additional information on their research career to provide the context when assessing their research achievements and peer recognition. And by that, we mean in case applicant career breaks or there was career paths, for example, the applicant worked some time in industry, then went back to the academia. So it's important to explain that maybe there were some gaps in scientific performance, and then reviewers will understand that as long as they have explanation, and they will take into consideration in their assessment. As I mentioned, since this year, evaluation primarily is focused on the groundbreaking nature, ambition, and feasibility of the proposed research project. And in terms of the principal investigator, there are no numerical scoring anymore, so the reviewers are asked to provide qualitative assessment, but not numerical scoring. So what can I say? So far with this new system, we had starting grants evaluation step 1 just recently, a few weeks ago, and it worked like this. It's true that more emphasis was put on the project and less emphasis on the performance on the principal investigator. Of course, the principal investigator needs to have a relevant expertise to implement the project, but the more emphasis is now put on the project. While writing your curriculum vitae and track record, we would recommend you choose templates as much as possible, and remember that CV, track record of part B1 are important, very important. So dedicate enough time and effort, think about them carefully. And then it's important that you convince the panel that you are you are a leader in your research field, and that can be different for different people. You should highlight your key strengths and accomplishments. Explain what has been your own contribution to your publications and how they have impacted the field. Yes, quality is way more important than quantity. Also, if, for example, you were a joint correspondent author, I would recommend not switch the order of the authorship, because if the reviewers see that, they become very unhappy. And they don't like that. So, and they check the publications, they check achievements, they like to know the applicants. If you, yes, as I mentioned, if you know that you have gaps or the issues in your CV, it's very important to explain them and accurately any other activity, which can indicate your scientific achievements. So, I can also speak now about evaluation procedure. So we have step 1 and step 2. In step 1 evaluation, the reviewers in each review panel, which composed between 12 and 16 reviewers, they evaluate proposals remotely. We ask them to work as generalists because in some cases, they are not specialists in that specific field. Usually, 4 reviewers are evaluating one grant application, and they look at synopsis, which is part B1, and curriculum vitae. And we ask them to look at feasibility of the project. They provide remote reviews, and then they come to Brussels for the panel meeting. And they have to score all proposals, A, or B, or C. Which is new this year, that the maximum 44 proposals interview limit was introduced. So otherwise they would have to decide which proposal go to step 2 evaluation. And okay, so in the past was 3 times available budget. Now we can have, there is no this limit, so they can also have more than 3 times available budget, so more applicants can be invited for the interview, which means that for the next year, they will be able to apply if they want, even if they don't get a grant, because all grant applications will pass to, which pass to step 2, then they can apply the next year as well. While applications which are rejected in step 1, they have to wait 1 or 2 years in order to be able to apply. So in step 2, there is remote assessment by ERC panels, but also panel members, but also we ask external reviewers to look at the applications at the project. We ask them to do so because we look for experts in for that specific proposal. We contact many experts from all over the world, and they are not paid for this work. They do like a peer review task, and they send the reviews. And there is the interview which takes place, panel meeting and interview, and and full proposal part B2 is evaluated with the detailed methodology as well as the budget. So the new things in research projects, as I said, I mentioned briefly. So in the past, the ERC was referent to high risk, high gain. That was changed to a groundbreaking, ambitious, and feasible project. The reason for that was that it was sometimes difficult for the reviewers to reach a consensus, which is meant by high risk, high gain. So it was decided that terminology ambitious would be more relevant. Another change since this year is that novel methodologies reference again was abandoned, because novel methodologies is an element that may be positive, but it's not strictly necessary for an excellent proposal. So that was. And in terms of groundbreaking nature, ambitious, and feasibility, we ask reviewers to assess to what extent the proposed research address important challenges, to what extent are the objectives ambitions beyond the state of the art, and to what extent the scientific approach is feasible, because we can also come up with very unrealistic project, and then the reviewers may simply say that science fiction is not feasible, and they will not like that. And then to what extent our proposed research methodology are appropriate to achieve the objectives. And of course, there's also to which extent the resources and the PI committed are appropriately justified. I cannot move the slide.
No,
No, okay, no. Sorry.
Okay, all good?
Yes,
It's moving.
I would say that Part B1, it's a very important document. I probably even say that probably is the most important document. Maybe it's my personal opinion, but if it's not well written and it gets rejected in step 1, then that's it. You know, there is no step 2 anymore. And Part B1, it's kind of all about finding the right balance. I agree with the statement. It gives the first impression of your project and yourself, and yes, and it will determine if you pass to step 2. And then if you get invited to the interview, you can defend your project, and you can, I think it's a better opportunity than to convince panel members in the interview. But Part B1, it's yes, it's better to write it very clear, avoid jargon, no excessive highlighting. There is no need to put the groundbreaking in every single sentence. There is no need to oversell it. Make sure that there are no typos or track changes. Make sure that you know, the figures and tables are properly explained. It's important also to, for example, to put a right font size, because so that the reviewers can read well. It's important to use properly the space given. 5 pages seems not much, but sometimes we see projects with, you know, when only 3 pages are written, and saying, okay, more information in Part B2. It doesn't work like this. In step 1 evaluation, reviewers have access only to Part B1. They don't have access to Part B2. So their decision on whether they want to see this applicant presenting in the interview based on Part B1. So it's very important to provide sufficient information about your experimental strategy, about your hypothesis, about what you are planning to do. And from our experience, we can conclude that 5 pages should be sufficient to do that. And you can ask yourself before writing, is my project new, innovative, and bringing new solutions here? Because if it is not the case, ERC reviewers probably will not like it. They really are instructed to fund innovative ideas. Then does it promise to go substantially beyond the state of the art? Please focus on the groundbreaking nature, something which is significant, that will last, and not only just something will be improved in 5 years. Ask yourself, is my project important? And how can you prove or support your case? Do you have a hypothesis? Do you have a supporting evidence? Have you proven project feasibility? Are my goals realistic? And then, is it timely? Why is the best time now? Why it wasn't done in the past? Maybe, you know, before there were no microscopes, which were could find something which you are trying to find now. So think about what are the risks. ERC still wants to fund high-risk projects, but if it's high risk, then we also should think about alternative strategy, because what will happen if it will not work? So reviewers want to see alternative mitigating strategies. If there are 3 objectives, for example, and the first objective is the most risky, and 2 others and 2 remaining objectives are depending on the first objective, then reviewers also may say, well, you know, if the first objective fails, then the whole project fails. So really careful thinking about the project. Oh, and then one more thing about your collaborations. it's very important as well, because you should show that collaborators, because the principal investigator cannot have all necessary expertise. It's a huge project. It's multidisciplinary in most of the cases, and it's normal that the principal investigator needs collaborators. But the key part of the project should belong to the principal investigator. Otherwise, reviewers also will say that if the project depends too much on collaborators, it may not work. Now, as a principal investigator, you can also ask yourself why I'm the best or the only person to carry out. During the interview, reviewers very frequently ask about your competitors, what is the state of the play, why is your idea different from the competitors? Then, am I able to work independently and to manage a 5-year project with a substantial budget? And am I international active, because it's really international funding scheme? Okay. And for the PI assessment, these questions are asked to looked at, and reviewers try to answer to what extent has the PI demonstrated the ability to conduct groundbreaking research, to what extent does the PI provide evidence of creative and original thinking, and to what extent the PI has required scientific capacity. So part B2 is more for filling in the details, and there is no need to repeat what was already written in part B1. And you just go into details on your methodology and work plan. Of course, again, researchers understand very well that it's impossible to foresee everything in details for the coming 5 years, but the more details you provide, the more reviewers will appreciate your thinking. So you thought about that, you planned, and they will appreciate that. You can explain your hypothesis, provide supporting evidence. It's very important. I can say that it's very important in life sciences project. They like hypothesis-driven projects because if there is no hypothesis, they sometimes call exploratory research or fishing expedition, and it's not always appreciated. Yes, make sure that the quantitative and the qualitative difference to the state of the art are very clear a reference. So that you did your homework, that looked at the evidence. As I mentioned, provide alternative strategies to mitigate the risk. Yes, make sure that there is an obvious link between part B1 and part B2, definitely. Part B2, make project easy to read and attractive. Reviewers appreciate a lot when it's easy to read. So we want to help them, right? We want them to like your proposal. We want them to say that, oh, it was easy to read. I really appreciate it. Was clear reference. So that's important. And use paragraphs, correct typos, check coherence of the figures. The same as in part B1, use full space available, 14 pages. Make sure you have full references, and you should describe some sort of timeline. And as I mentioned, think the project as a team and explain involvement of team members, but remember that ERC proposals are not consortium proposals. That's very important. In terms of resources and budget, budget analysis is carried out in step 2 evaluation. Panels, they have responsibility to ensure that resources requested are reasonable and well justified. And also panel members have right to modify we call in our language budget cuts if they think that it's not properly justified. And yeah, but we also instruct panel members not to do micromanagement project finances. So there is no negotiation. So once the panel, review panel decides on this amount of money, that's it. You know, if some budget was cut, the PI actually take it or leave it, but there is no possibility to negotiate on that. It's important to ask for funding for open access. This is an obligatory in Horizon Europe, so that's included in the budget rather than you will have to pay for it. If you have been invited for the interview, you have to follow the instructions given by the panel which invited you, because every panel has a little bit different structure. Sometimes the presentation can be 5 minutes, sometimes presentation can be 10 minutes, or limit of slides. So you just follow the instructions. It's focused on science, of course, because the panel members already read your CV and track record. Anticipate questions, know the details of your proposal and methods, your research area, who are main competitors, collaborators. It's very important to practice, and ask your peers, do mock exercise, mock interview, so that all kinds of questions could be asked. And the more you practice and the more you think about possible challenges, the more prepared you will be for the interview. What are typical reasons for rejection of the proposal? So the scope of the proposals, it can be seen as too narrow, or it can be seen as too broad. So too narrow would be assessed by reviewers as not really ERC project, and too broad and focused again is like would not probably deliver expected results. So ERC doesn't want to fund incremental research. A collaborative project, no, as I mentioned, it's not really a consortium, it's the PI-driven project. Work plan is not detailed enough or unclear. Insufficient risk management could be one of the reasons why it's rejected. Or Part B2 did not give sufficient information on the methodology. And principal investigator, so now the track record of the PI has less weight, but of course the evaluators want to see whether the principal investigator has sufficient expertise to implement the objectives of the project. So yes, that's very important to see whether expertise is relevant for the project. In the interview, the PI maybe could not address properly the questions, panel was not convinced in the idea or project, they thought it's not innovative. There was maybe lack of supporting evidence or unaddressed issues. If your project was rejected, what we try to convey the message when we do this kind of information sessions, that we would like to encourage you to keep trying to apply, because our statistics show that reapplication have a higher chances to succeed. And one of the reasons is that applicants receive a feedback from evaluators, from our reviewers, are top researchers in the world. They are fantastic, they are great, they took time to read your proposal and they provide feedback. And we send back to the applicants all individual reviews, and it's very useful. So it's really writing to the ERC grant, it's not considered as a waste of time, because the top researchers provided the feedback to you so that you can work and improve your research project if you want to keep on working. Now briefly about Advanced Grant 2024 lump sum model, so general principles. So as I said, it's a pilot project. There is still work going on, and the groundbreaking and ambitious nature of the ERC grants will not change. So applicants are not changing no way how they structure, how they write, how they think their project. So that is not changing. And part B1 and part B2 full proposal are the same under the actual cost and lump sum model. So it doesn't change anything, right? Evaluation criteria also remain the same. So scientific excellence only. And the lump sum model will have no impact on the quality of scientific project. So it's only for advanced grant 2024, starting and consolidated grants keep actual cost model funding. So under the ERC lump sum model, a single lump sum contribution is foreseen for the entire project and is defined by project, of course, different for each project, and capped at funding scheme ceiling, 2.5 million normal maximum grant amount for advanced grant, plus 1 million additional funding under certain conditions. So if selected for funding based on the scientific evaluation, if panel says, okay, we want to fund this project, then the same panel assess resources needed in related cost estimates. And they approve, they assess and they approve, the same panel, review panel. And which is different, of course, than once project is implemented, no more claims of actual cost incurred during the project lifetime. Deviation to the work plan can be reported, amendments can take place, the same as has been so far with the ERC project, same as actual cost model, so that doesn't change. So the difference is that with the ERC lump sum model, 80% of the lump sum contribution is paid out as pre-financing. And then principal investigators, they report on scientific implementation of the project at the midterm and at the end. And the final payment, this remaining 20%, is made if all efforts have been made towards implementation of the project. All essential tasks have been completed, or equivalent tasks have been completed, or deviations, amendments, deviations have been justified, and amendment took place. So, of course, there will be some changes in submission form. So additional declaration by applicants on host institutions that cost estimates have been established following usual accounting principle and applicable eligibility conditions. So again, I think if you have questions, you as an applicant or host institutions you are working with have questions, I think you can really ask, you can send an email to functional mailbox and they will help you to tackle this question. So budget, in the budget table, a new column to record the number of person months per star category for a batch of your personal cost. And there is also an option for budget narrative. Use of resources is now more structured for the better overview of the budget. So here there's the budget table, information on person months, right? So that's how we're going to look. And this is narrative resources section, a new structure also. So maybe just again, very briefly, I think I still have a few minutes time. Summary of novelties. So focus on research, groundbreaking, ambitions, feasible. It's good news for the countries like Latvia, Lithuania, because in many cases, of course, the researchers, these countries have weaker research infrastructure. And it's sometimes very difficult to compete, of course, with other countries who have stronger research infrastructure. So it's good for us. It's good for us. You should feel more confident and try to apply, because it's a good chance now to focus when focus is on the project. Now, up to 10 research outputs, short narrative, career break, diverse paths. So again, no prescriptive PI profile. You can explain these 10 research outputs with short narrative and try to convince evaluators that you are the right person to carry out this project. So evaluation procedure, now we have more proposals could go to step 2 evaluation. Which means that if proposal goes to step 2, they can reapply already the year after. They don't need to wait. They don't have to wait 1 year or 2 years for it to be able to apply. If a panel has more than 44 interviews, sometimes they can even have A, not invited, which is also good because even if they are not invited to the interview, they still can reapply next year. That's another change. And in advanced grant, I just mentioned about lump sum pilot, and then we also have a new panel as social science and humanities, panel 8. And there are some changes in the scriptures and life sciences, panels 3 and 5. Yes, already mentioned the deadline for advanced grants, so that's correct. And you can find more information in the ERC website. And yes, take a chance and apply. It's up to you how far you can go. If you don't try, you will never know. So I hope that that it was useful what I was talking about. And of course, I am happy to take questions if you may have.
Yes, thank you very much, Rada. I already see that we have the first question in the chat. I think it's on the success rate for advanced grant previous calls. So do you have some numbers in mind?
Yes, it's approximately, it varies, of course, every year, but I would say we very seldom have lower than 10%. I think I on average would be 12%, 11% success rate.
As for advanced grant is quite good. While others are gearing up to ask you questions, I have a question. Those 44 applicants who are going to be selected after 44 to go for interview, does it mean that there's a higher, because there's a limit now on the number, does it mean there's a higher chance of getting funding in the step 2?
No.
No, okay. No, okay.
No, the success rate doesn't change. Is that the thing is that it's for the applicant, it's good because if they pass to step 2, first of all, it's a learning exercise. Interview, it's very stressful, but it's a fantastic learning exercise. And also they can reapply next year. Success rate doesn't change.
Okay, I thought that maybe there's somehow related to that. And in terms of the risk as well, I have another question. So the high risk, high gain has been removed, and I think it's going to be very greatly appreciated by the community. But in terms of describing risks in the B1 and B2, there still has to be a description of scientific risk, right? And the mitigation measures according to each of the risks.
Yes, it's in a way it doesn't change much because we still want innovative research, and once it's innovated, of course, there is risk involved, right? But it was somehow this lack of consensus what we mean exactly, but somehow each panel would evaluate differently. But yes, because if it's incremental research, if it's all over the same, reviewers probably will not appreciate that. So they want something innovative, and when it's something innovative, then of course there is risk involved.
But again, it's not a management risk of the project. It's more like scientific risks.
Scientific risk, yes, scientific risk.
And I think we all, as you mentioned, Vaida, just to highlight to all our participants, we really welcome this focus on the project, the higher emphasis rather than on the CV of the PI. I think, yes, we have in the Baltic countries more chances of really getting the funding for all those innovative, groundbreaking ideas. So that's my questions.
Yes.
So, I also have a question. Even though as an NCP, I know already most of the things that you already shared, but still would like to clarify one thing you mentioned, and we know that the excellence is the core criteria, so that the researcher, and now we are focusing more on the project. And at least in previous years from Latvia, I have heard that applicants are surprised that there is not that much focus on impact, but when we check the evaluation questions, still you have there a question on how your project address important challenges. So anyways, you need to think of the somehow an impact on the field, improving and you know, I don't know how to describe it. So anyways, there is this part, a big part of the impact. What do you bring with your project to the research field and how you improve it? So could you please elaborate a bit more? So how to understand this impact part and addressing challenges and what does it mean exactly? So a bit on this.
I think, yes, by impact, when I mentioned that it's different from other EU funding scheme, that it's not impact on society, you know, it's more impact in kind of in basic research, especially, and sometimes there are projects which the reviewers say, well, actually, it's really like, you know, basic science, maybe molecular level, and there is no clear impact foreseen, but it's something fundamental new. And this impact sometimes you cannot even see at the moment, but it maybe will be in even, you know, in several years later. But if something fundamental new which has not been thought about or discovered or whatever described, it's that's what matters at the ERC. But not all over the same. Are you in the field for whatever, and then I have one model maybe, and I'll just put another in some different context, but still the same model. So it's something which the reviewers would say, wow, you know, I never thought about that. It's this way of thinking. It's so beautiful. I became enthusiastic of reading that. It's fantastic. I want to see this applicant in the interview. I want to listen. I want to hear more about that. It's this kind of project which they get happy and want to hear more. So I think we have to go to the spirit, this enthusiasm, you know, which we create and with our reviewers, who are excellent people. They have seen a lot. They have looked why they want to come to and work for the ERC, because they want to have these new ideas and look at innovative project, because for them it's very interesting. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I think this impact, it's the researchers are able to identify whether if it's something new, maybe we cannot establish immediately impact, but in the future it can have it. So
yes, thank you. So think about your research field and how are you contributing with your project. So that's the main idea. Yes, thank you, Vaida. And we have another question in the chat. So the question is, if project is refused in first evaluation stage, so step 1, then better to change the research idea in next year's submission. So should applicants reapply with the same idea but improved, or another idea?
It depends. It depends also which were the reasons for rejection. It's important to read the feedback from the reviewers. If there was a small thing, something, maybe they will say idea is good, but there were no I don't know, preliminary data, then no, just work on the same idea, but get preliminary data. If they will say, I don't know, or they will say maybe everything is good, but the PI has no relevant expertise, and try to get expertise. I don't know. It depends. It's impossible to know what you have to do unless you try to understand which is the feedback from the reviewer.
Right.
Thank you, Vaida.
Shall we move on to an example?
Yes, but I have one final comment. So we talked about step 1 and step 2, but just to reassure that everyone understood it right. So for the ERC, that it's one-stage application. So you apply and you submit all parts of the proposal. So part A, which is a portal, part B1, which is the short synopsis, and also the part B2. So you submit your proposal all together once, but after submitted, it will be evaluated in 2 different steps. So this is just for clarification. I know from experience that sometimes this is misunderstood. As in Horizon Europe, we do have projects with the 2-step submissions. So yeah, for now, thank you very much, Vaida. Yes, we hope you will still stay with us, and maybe there will be some more questions coming afterwards. So for now, thank you very much. Could you please stop sharing, because we still see your slides? Yes, thank you very much. And we would like to continue with our success story. And thank you again for coming, Professor Dembowski. So ERC Advanced grant grantee who received the grant. So yes, we can see your slides in full screen. I would like to give you the floor, and maybe you can better introduce yourself than I can. So please, the floor is yours, and feel free to share your story.
So thank you very much for invitation. So my name is Andrzej Dembowski, and I'm RNA biologist. So I work on RNA, and actually recently it was a very fortunate time for RNA biology, because actually before it was absolutely mainly basic science, but recently during the COVID pandemic, actually the first mRNA-based therapeutics were introduced. Therefore, it started to be also more interesting from the medical point of view, which quite helped me with the application for ERC Advanced grant, which I will tell you a bit longer. But because also I'm RNA biologist, I also to introduce a bit more about, subject of the research we are conducting. But this is mRNA molecule, which encodes proteins. Now, fortunately, everyone knows what is mRNA. It can be endogenous or synthesized in vitro by in vitro transcription. Then you produce some analogs to the cap structure at the beginning, which protects mRNA from degradation, but also is essential for the production of proteins. And every mRNA also contains poly-A tail, which is a long homopolymeric track. And this poly-A tail is very important for the stability. For endogenous mRNA, it's actually essential to export mRNA from the nucleus to the cytoplasm also. And actually, those poly-A tails is a subject for research in my lab for several years. So we know that the stability of mRNA is regulated by the rate how this poly-A tail is removed, and there are specific enzymes and processes which regulate this removal of poly-A tails. And essentially, in majority of at least of cases, this poly-A tail is just removed, but also there are some groups of enzymes which instead of degrading this poly-A tail can also extend this poly-A tail, which is important for actually all ERC grant application I was involved in. So just to tell you actually when I was unsuccessful or successful in ERC grant, so I actually applied several times for ERC grant. So I applied for a first just at the beginning of the ERC. This was not about the poly-A tails, and my application was unsuccessful. Then I waited a bit till I will build a better CV to have more significant publication. I applied again for a starting consolidator grant. At that time, it was not really fully separated with a grant, which was actually involved in the analysis of the enzymes which modified this poly-A tail of mRNA. That was completely about endogenous mRNA. And I was successful. And when this grant was ending, I started, because I was already old, that I couldn't go for consolidator, so I was trying to get an advanced grant. Initially, it was in 2018, and it was completely unsuccessful, so I was rejected at the first stage. And then a few years later, I applied again with the advanced grant. I got to the second stage, but I was unsuccessful, and then in 2022, I received the ERC Advanced grant. In the meanwhile, I also was a panel member of LS2 for Consolidator grant. It's also important to say that, as we already said, it's really important to fit into the right panel. So, like, for example, when I got this consolidator starting grant. It was more mechanistic work, and I applied for Life Science 1, which is more mechanistic biology. Then in 2018, I applied for more medically or organismal level biology, and actually I failed. And then I moved to more genomics panel. And I think it's a really important decision. I wanted to tell you a few things about this initial grant I applied and how it helped me also with this advanced grant. And then I would tell you a few words about the advanced grant. At the end, I also wanted to give you some advices. Maybe they will be partially repeatable what was before, but from the perspective of the people who applied rather than the judge. So all what I was doing was related to the polyetails, and the first application I was applying was about this families of enzymes which can modify those polyetails. So maybe I should put pointer options as a laser pointer. So first of all, it was actually important always to build a CV which have some significant publications, which then can show to the reviewer that indeed I can produce research which is sufficiently, let's say, cutting edge or go beyond the typical applications. And when I was applying for the first time, mainly I believe that my CV was not sufficient, although I had a few quite interesting papers. No one of them was actually published, for example, in Nature journal. Unfortunately, the journal you publish is really important. But then the second time I was applying for these consolidators, we had one interesting discovery connected with the mechanism of RNA degradation. We also produced some other publications, and we also discovered some enzymes which modifies mRNA 3' end. And then with this first ERC grant I received, we actually were describing also new enzymes which can modify polyetail. And especially we discovered a new family of polymerases, which in the cytoplasm, the place where the protein production appears, they can modify those polyetails. And this is also important partially from medical point of view, because this enzyme mutated, for example, in multiple myeloma, the specific type of cancer. We were able to show why those mutations enhance survival of cancer cell, why it is a non-cardinal tumor suppressor. So with this ERC consolidation starting grants, I was able also to publish and describe, I believe, several more interesting molecular mechanisms. But what was the most important, we discovered one particular family of enzymes which really can stabilize and modify mRNA, which have a relevance for a cancer, but also for several different regulations. And at that time, I started to think about applying for this ERC grant. Initially, I applied for this classical molecular analysis of this particular family of enzymes, which actually was rejected initially, mainly because I think it was like a kind of typical approach. It was not very innovative. And because of the lack of this innovation, and also my CV, to be honest, was in this like lower grades of the people who can get advanced grant, I was rejected. But then actually, we also develop new methodologies. And this is an important aspect, that although actually ERC grants are for basic research, it's really good to have some methodological advancements, because this shows that you can, let's do things other people cannot. So you have some waiver to go beyond of the state of the art. And we actually, because we are interested in this homopolymers, which are at the end of the mRNA, we're very much interested in one particular, from my view, very interesting methodology, which is the so-called Oxford Nanophore platform for sequencing of nucleic acids. And this is a very peculiar methodology in which you have a membrane with a pores which can record the current. And a single-stranded nucleic acid can pass through the pore, and you can record the current perturbation because of the shape of the nucleic acid. And here, for example, you have a current of a single mRNA molecule when you have a body of mRNA and also this poly-A tail. This enables you the very accurate measurement of the length of the poly-A tail. You can also devise some more sophisticated algorithms based on neural networks. We actually were involved in that to detect some modification of the poly-A tails. And this have given us some new methodological aspects which enabled or helped me actually to apply for an ERC. But the main reason was actually that this mRNA-based therapeutic was introduced. And those people were believing that actually are metabolized very similar to endogenous mRNA, but it was never really deeply studied. So although they were so successful, they were actually the best-selling drugs, the metabolism in vivo was not very well described, and actually how those poly-A tails which determine stability are modified. So we devised a methodology for analyzing the mRNA-based therapeutic. There was some complication because actually in therapeutic mRNA there is no uridine, but there is modified nucleotide methylpseudouridine. We had to devise some algorithm. But here, for example, is a single read, single molecule analysis of one single mRNA vaccine. This is actually the Moderna vaccine. You can measure poly-A tail. You can look on something. But the most important aspect with my application was actually the preliminary data. And to our, let's say, surprise, but also happiness, we discovered that actually mRNA-based therapeutics can be stabilized by the family of enzymes we were studying before, which is the family of polymerases. And because of this extension of poly-A tail, the mRNA-based therapeutic can be far more stable than anyone before was expecting. At least in vivo or target cells, mRNA therapeutics are actually uptaken by immune cells like macrophages, also dendritic cells. In contrast to some model cell types, people actually study. Moderna was actually analyzing the stability of that in model cell line. The metabolism is very different. So we had this surprising observation that actually the metabolism of mRNA-based drugs is kind of different than anyone before was expecting. And this is the basis for a further research. And actually, we were also able to show that this affects the efficacy of the vaccine. So if you, for example, take mice which have no 10-5A gene, which is this gene responsible for this elongation of poly-A tails of the mRNA vaccine, then you will see that there is a less production of the antigen, which is used to build immune response, and actually also you produce less antibodies against the encoded protein. Here is a spike protein, the part of the coronavirus. So with this project, we are planning to further develop the methodology and use this to study in vivo stability of mRNA-based therapeutics, but also endogenous mRNA. And we believe that we can then, this knowledge, we can translate the knowledge to improve the design of mRNA-based therapeutic. And I believe that it's important that if in the project, despite it being of the nature of basic science, if you have some promise that you can improve something which have, in case of biology, is often like some medical application, it can make help. It's not exactly essential, I would say, because you can have an absolutely basic science project, but it may help, especially in case if you're borderline. Because with the last 1 or 2 minutes, I just wanted to tell you that actually, I think writing grants, applying to grants is quite strategic. So you have to have a feeling what are your chances. And although with a success rate of about 10%, there is partially a lottery, but you can really help to have a feeling what are your chances to looking for all the projects were previously given. And obviously, sometimes people have this outstanding projects, outstanding CV, they will get whatever they apply. But actually, in majority of people are rather in the range of this good project. So it is really important to try to improve this good project as much as you can. So I think that this is this part which you really have to improve. So I believe that applying for ERC grant, you have to learn indeed if your CV is potentially sufficient. So what actually is a CV of before people getting to a grant, and then to look based on the abstracts and CVs, look, what kind of project in this particular panel can be funded. I think I'm kind of out of time because that was supposed to be a 15 minutes. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer the questions if you may have to me.
Yes, thank you, Professor. So yes, we do have already one question. So could you please share what was the greatest motivation for you to reapply after unsuccessful application? So we saw that you have a really big experience with ERC grants.
So for sure, of course, if you are running an experimental laboratory, you need money. Without money, you cannot do research. If you are, solitary theoretical mathematician, obviously that does not need a lot of money. But in my particular case, all those experiments, you need a personnel in the laboratory, you need a consumables. So with this point, I'm just and for a basic science, ERC Advanced grants are actually one of the biggest grants you can obtain. Yes, so I don't think with Polish system, I'm from Poland, the other type of grants are twice smaller, I would say. Yes, so this is the important thing, and also I think it's important, this kind of like prestigious aspects of ERC grants. So this helps you a lot. I think it helps you not only that you are getting this money, but you are put in those like para-elite people getting ERC Advanced grants. It helps you also then in all national grants, I believe. So I haven't yet applied to national grants after receiving the advance, but I believe that this will be very, very helpful. It also helps the institution because, like if you see all European institutions, the first thing on their page about the research is how many ERC grants they got. So that also help politically your institution to get some, structural funding or whatever funding to get some, more infrastructure. And so it's not that I was applying, all the time. I was always applying at the time I was believing I have a chance. Yes. Sometimes probably I was over-optimistic, as it can be seen. So I was applying several times. Twice I was successful. With this grant about mRNA-based therapeutic and this, polyethyl dynamics analysis, this was I applied. So first time I gone to the second stage. So then that was kind of obvious that I apply again. Yeah. So then when I was completely unsuccessful in 2018, then, of course, there was a 2 years currency, but also without this very striking observation about mRNA-based therapeutics, that we discovered something absolutely unexpected. So no one thought, even from the companies which produce these drugs, that this can happen. I had the feeling that I have a chance. Yes, and that was the reason why I applied.
Okay, thank you. And then there is the second part of the question, and actually I had the same question. We also heard from Vaida's presentation that, the grants are big, especially advanced grants. It's up to 2.5 million and up to 5 years, and it's almost impossible to do it alone. So what about your team and contributors? So how did you choose? How did you formulate your team, and what were the roles? So could you please explain a bit more about this part?
So it's a bit in this way that, the roles of the team members depend also who you can recruit and what are their capabilities. So I have to honestly say that in last 15 years, I was running a lab which was quite big, so between 20 and 30 people. And because I was quite successful in some national funding sources or structural funds, which for Central Europe were quite significant over the years. And then with a writing grant, so I believe that, writing a grant is writing something which will be reviewed by the reviewers. And I always think, to be honest, when you, especially with the ERC, you can anyway change many things about, actually who exactly will be hired or so. It was rather thinking what the reviewer will expect from me. So how to build a team, roles of the team, which I would judge as the optimal for this kind of the project. Yes, so there is quite a lot of bioinformatics. So there are people doing bioinformatics. There are people with experience in mice because there are some experiments in transgenic mice. So it's all, with this years of experience in writing grants, reviewing grants, or getting reviews from your grant, you think about this more tactically, I would say. You think about it all the time, how to write a grant which will be successful. Of course, with the project you are interested in, yes, but sometimes you write something a bit slightly differently because you believe that this will be judged better.
Lena, I have a follow-up question. So you said you will strategically write, you can write a grant that is successful. So how to write that grant that is successful from all of your experience? What are those, I don't know, 5 top things that everybody should do for the grant to be successful, especially the ESC one?
So I believe that the structure is so important, but there must be a logic behind. It's all the time about if one thing is dependent on the another. Very often people, especially unexperienced, myself, when I read now the grants I have wrote 15 years ago, come on, how I could do that? Although some were successful, so it's not that, yes, but it's just that there is always one thing is dependent on the another in logic. On the other hand, you must have, that was already said, contingency plan, or, you have to mitigate the risk. And mitigation the risk comes from contingency planning. So you have to say, if something does not work, you will do this and this. Because if one would like to kill your grant, if you have no contingency, can always kill your grant. It's just by saying there is no contingency plan, dot. So that I believe is important. It's important to have a connection between parts. So you cannot, it's not good to write a grant which is divided in 3 parts. Every part is different and no one knows how it will be connected. And actually, from experience, this is the most difficult part to be written. How to do it in such a way that you describe the different things, but everything is connected one with another. So I think this is a really, really important thing. Another thing is you must have preliminary data unless you have so impressive CV or previous work, which was the follow-up anyway is so important. And sometimes the things can be presented as the preliminary data, even though they are not as much preliminary. So for example, you have some idea which comes from analysis of the genomes, and sometimes you just can propose that you will study that. Although you can write in the preliminary studies we have performed, I don't know, those analyses. Yes, so the presentation. And also maybe the last thing, which is kind of specific very much to the Central Europe for sure, it's that we rarely write as a present tense. So we've done it. I will do that. It's it's always, and it's really good to do that because it makes a feeling that it will indeed, it's your idea. You will do that. It's not that it will be done.
So this was the difference between your 21 and 22 success, that you had the preliminary data that you have included in the
21, 22, I can tell you I had more preliminary data, but the main thing is that it's really good to start a grant, writing the grant in advance. I would say that it's good to start it in half a year before a deadline. But I had this preliminary data, it was June, and I had to write it till
August,
and that was not enough time. So there were caveats. There were things I were not, like for example, I wrote, because you must be confident. And I wrote that with some bioinformatic analysis that we will do either that or that. And then what was the reviewer? The guy didn't know what he actually wanted to do.
So be specific and be convincing,
so
and
to,
you need to know
read
what
it
you're
several
doing.
times and remove all these weak points. Give it to the friends who will read, especially those who are not so nice or, critical.
So have the critical friends to read and review the proposal.
Yeah, that's really helped a lot, because yourself is often, more and longer in writing grants. It's yourself. You are better in seeing, caveats. But it's always that the friend can find out it more easily, I would say.
Thank you. And you would say that determination helped you to be where you are now?
Could you repeat?
The determination, being determined,
I believe
was
so.
one of the
I actually believe so. I believe so that there is a lot. I believe that in science, determination is very important, and also the constant development. The field, the molecular biology, is moving so fast that if you do not move together with the field, then no chance.
Thank you.
I would also like to jump in with one of my questions. So you mentioned already a couple of times your CV, to build up your CV. So was that something that you heard from evaluators when you applied, that you should improve your CV? And you also mentioned that you had some significant publications. So what do you mean by significant publications, and how was your path towards that?
So let's say, to be honest, although we all, I think, agree that people shouldn't be judged just by the names of the journal they publish. And that's very, very true. But for sure, in biology, if you have a papers in Nature, Science, or Cell, that will help. And I would say that with the advanced grant, probably half of the people who are getting advanced grant every year have a paper as a corresponding author in one of those journals. So without this kind of publication, it can be more difficult. Yes, I do not want to say it's impossible, but it's simply more difficult. And of course, not every paper in Nature is significant. And of course, there are papers published in theory, much less prestigious journals, which can be very, very important. But you also have to know that if you are a panel member, you are judging dozens of grants. Let's say you are skewed into easy decisions. So you look at that. Then so I believe, especially at the panel level, when you are judged with the people who are not expert in your field, where is the published is important. Another thing is, if you can write a 2-sentence summary why this particular paper was the contribution of this paper. So if your paper really means something, if you can really say, even if it's not very prestigious journal, if you can say what was discovered in your CV, if you can say what was discovered. Yes, that. In Central Europe, we always, at least in Poland, people say, he published 100 papers with a cumulative impact factor something, and which was cited something like that. That's not the thing. It must be defined. You must be able to define what actually we discovered. Yes. So in my case, I was working on some exosome complex, which is a primary enzyme degrading RNA nucleus. You can say we discovered what are the catalytic subunits, what is the mechanism of action, or we discovered the new way how mRNA can be stabilized in the cytoplasm. Yes, it's not that my contribution, for sure, majority of people who got an advanced grant had a more significant contribution than myself. There's no doubt about it.
But then just kind of to bring Vaida in, and I think so we will close. So what you are saying about those journal articles, but Vaida, now with evaluation, it's slightly different, isn't it? So the focus will not be as much on the PI, as you said, but more on the project. So do those journals publication? Wow.
It's a theory. The practice is that people are just people. They will come, even though they are supposed not to judge, anyway, they will judge.
But we had already one panel evaluation for the EC starting grants based on this model. So Vaida, could you just reflect?
And also for the ERC signed DORA declaration. So it means that they would focus more, and that's why this narrative part of CV was introduced. So how to understand
this narrative must define, yes, and what you write in this narrative. We discovered this and this, and we cite this paper there, yes. So of course, if you can describe in narrative way what you discovered, then this is kind of the same, but depend on the panel, and the more heterogeneous panel, it will more look on the name. So if you go more into this medically oriented panels, I believe it will match.
Okay, let's allow Vaida to reply, and then we will finish. Thank you.
Yeah. So I wanted to mention DORA. So DORA was, I believe, like 2 years ago, and I think it changed a little bit because it was really instructions given that high impact journals kind of shouldn't be kind of the main criteria of judgment, and now, since this year, we have starting grant step 1 evaluation, and I can confirm that it was a difference. It was less emphasis on the PI track record, and we had several cases where if we compare the PIs, the applicants, and there were somehow we can say weaker, right? No. And some panel members really defended, and it was passed to step 2 to the interview. Of course, expertise is there. The applicant is capable of implement the project, but if not outstanding CV, and the panel members defended the case because exactly because of that instructions this year are like this. So maybe when you start working in consolidators, you will see the difference. Maybe it depends on the panel, but we as a scientific officers, one of our job is also to intervene if we see the procedure is not correct. So we also kind of say, no, the procedure is the following.
But I'm for DORA, and it's not that I think we should judge people based on the names of the journals. But those people who are members of the panels were kind of have this mindset. And it doesn't even matter so much what they say, because they will sometimes put lower points into the research because they will not believe that this person is capable of doing that what the person promised to do. And so I believe that because we are meeting here to advise, so I believe that you should, if you want to get advanced, fight for a publication in better journals. And obviously you can say that this is not right, and I kind of agree. But the reality is that in Central European countries, we publish a lot, but not in good journals. And then also there is a definition, and and actually going through these editorial procedures also help you to learn how to write well, how to write a good cover letter. That will define the same way how to write, I don't know, abstract, which is good. And I really, believe me, I'm not for judging people based just on that. I'm just thinking that currently the situation is as it is. It is possibly moving into the better and better. So there will be less that, and there will be more truly discussing the science. But it will be a process, and still maybe the other way around. Papers in the most prestigious journal will help anyway.
Vaida, any last words, and we will close.
Yes. What can I say? Of course, if let's imagine we have 2 applicants with the more or less similar quality of the project, well written, excellent kind of, and then 2 CVs, and 1 CV is stronger and another was weaker. So yes, the stronger CV will go to the next step, and the weaker CV not. But if the CV is not at least what I have been observing now in starting class, of course, advanced run could be, let's see what will come to advanced run, because I agree completely that in advanced runs applicants are fantastic. They are very strong, and even outstanding researchers, they don't get the grants in advanced grants. So that's true. But I see a little bit of difference since this year, so time will show. Yes.
Yes, thank you very much, both of you. This was a really nice discussion at the end, so very useful. And we know that the changes were just introduced a few years ago, so we expect these things to improve and also more Baltic applicants to receive these grants. And to sum up this event, I have just written down some main conclusions or focus points for upcoming applicants. So first of all, to apply for the grant, ask yourself the right questions. So Vaida already presented for the project and for your CV. So ask your questions and search for the right answers in terms to understand if you fit in this scope of the ERC Advanced Grant Call. Second one, get help. So you have the guidance, you have guide for applicants, you have ERC classes, you have NCPs, you have events like this, and also on the YouTube or previous events organized by NCPs, you have sources where to find the information and how to understand the call and the application process. Get feedback. This is very important, and we see that this is a weak point in Baltics, that people are afraid of sharing their ideas, but otherwise you cannot improve if you don't show it to others and do not get any feedback and comments back. So evaluators will also assess your proposal. It will be more harsh than your peers. Know your field, of course. Know how is the state of the art currently, how is it not only in your country, in Baltics, in Europe, globally. Know your competitors also. What Andrzej said, and also what I think also Vaida commented, that put your focus on the structure. Evaluators read a lot of applications, so make your proposal easy to read, easy to follow, and easy to understand. And the last one, which was from Professor Jambowski, fit in the right panel in terms to be evaluated as it should be. So once again, Vaida and Andrzej, if I may, thank you very much for your contribution and coming in to this event and sharing about the call and about your project. And as we saw from Andrzej, be dedicated, do not give up. This is not that everyone receives the grant from the first time. Continue, improve, and go to your goal. And we hope that in few years we will have you as a presenter presenting your success story. So good luck to everyone. I just want to remind that NCPs are open in helping you, giving you guidance and showing the way how to apply for these calls. So if not this year, then next year, maybe, as these are annual calls for ERC. So thank you very much to all of you. Again, thank you, Aurelia, for collaboration. This is always a pleasure.
Yes, thank you for the speakers. Thank you all and have a good afternoon.
Yes, paldies, ačiū. Ďakuju. Thank you. So see you on next event. Bye-bye.
Ačiū.
Thanks a lot, bye.